The bright lights of Nashville have always promised dreams, fame, and a touch of romance. But behind those dazzling rhinestones, the truth often sounds more like a broken record. Because for every hit song about love and loyalty, there's a hidden story of betrayal, forbidden passion, or heartbreak so deep it could fill an entire album. The bright lights of Nashville have always promised dreams, fame, and a touch of romance. But behind those dazzling rhinestones, the truth often sounds more like a broken record. Because for every hit song about love and loyalty, there's a hidden story of betrayal, forbidden passion, or heartbreak so deep, it could fill an entire album. The world sees the smiles on stage, the sequin gowns, and the perfect harmonies. What it doesn't see are the quiet midnight calls, the whispers in dressing rooms, and the headlines that nearly ended careers. Country music isn't just built on steel guitars and soft twang. It's built on emotion raw enough to make the toughest cowboy cry. And no one embodies that contradiction quite like the women who defined it. They were bold enough to love publicly, brave enough to fall privately, and powerful enough to turn their pain into platinum. Some guarded their secrets so carefully that decades later, we're still guessing what really happened. Others found themselves trapped in scandals they never saw coming, rumors, affairs, and heartbreaks that played out like modern-day ballads. But that's the thing about country music. Even the messiest story can find its melody. These women didn't just survive the storm, they used it to sing louder. And as we uncover the tangled love lives of the queens of country, you'll realize that the songs you thought were fiction might have been confessions all along. Because behind every chorus about heartbreak, there's a name that was whispered but never printed. Behind every perfect performance, a moment backstage where love was tested or lost. This is the side of country music you weren't meant to see. The side where emotion meets exposure, and legends are born from heartbreak. Let's begin where secrecy met stardom, with a woman whose charm could light up any stage, but whose personal life was guarded like a national treasure. Dolly Parton. The hidden marriage and the rumors that wouldn't die. Dolly Parton's laughter could fill a room, and her voice could quiet one. She's the image of Southern warmth, big hair, bigger heart, and a personality that never fades. Yet behind that glitter and grace lies one of country music's greatest mysteries, the love story she kept almost entirely off stage. While the world fell in love with Dolly, she'd already fallen for a quiet man named Carl Dean. They married in 1966, long before she became a global icon, but you'd barely know he existed. In an industry where fame thrives on exposure, Dolly did something revolutionary. She hid her husband from it. Carl rarely appeared in public, and the two were photographed together so few times that fans began wondering if he was even real. That mystery became its own legend. Rumors swirled about secret romances with co-stars, musicians, even her duet partner, Porter Wagoner. Their chemistry on stage was undeniable, and when their partnership ended bitterly, tabloids claimed it was personal. Dolly never confirmed or denied it. She simply turned the pain into "I Will Always Love You," a song that would echo for generations. Her choice to stay silent wasn't weakness. It was strategy. Dolly knew that keeping part of herself private was the only way to survive in a business that devoured intimacy. She once joked that Carl didn't like the spotlight because he gets enough shine from me. But beneath that humor was wisdom. Not every love story is meant for public applause. Yet the speculation never stopped. Every friendship, every photograph sparked new gossip. Dolly's refusal to explain became both her shield and her secret weapon. While others' reputations were torn apart by scandal, she stayed untouchable, wrapped in mystery and wit. Even decades later, fans still debate what's real. But maybe that's the beauty of Dolly's story. The truth isn't what matters most. It's the loyalty behind it. She protected her marriage the same way she protects her fans' hearts, with tenderness and strength. And when she writes about love, you can feel it. It's real, but never revealed. Dolly's story shows that not every country romance had to end in flames. Some were simply hidden from the storm. But the next story wasn't nearly as quiet. Because while Dolly mastered discretion, another country star became the center of one of Hollywood's loudest love triangles. LeAnn Rimes, the affair that shook Nashville and Hollywood. By the time LeAnn Rimes was 13, she was already a household name, the golden girl of country music, a prodigy with a voice beyond her years. But early fame can be a fragile gift. While most teenagers were discovering who they were, LeAnn was already being watched by millions. Every smile and stumble magnified. That pressure followed her into adulthood, and by the time she hit her late 20s, the fairy tale image had cracked. On a film set in 2009, sparks flew between LeAnn and actor Eddie Cibrian, both married to other people at the time. What began as a quiet connection soon erupted into a national spectacle. Photos surfaced, headlines screamed, and within weeks, the media crowned her the villain of her own story. The backlash was brutal. She was accused of betraying fans, breaking homes, and tarnishing her once innocent image. Country radio turned cold, tabloids turned ruthless, and every song she released became a new battlefield for public opinion. But here's what few people understood. Behind the scandal was a woman finally living on her own terms. LeAnn didn't run from the fire. She faced it head-on. She admitted the affair, accepted the fallout, and started over. Her marriage ended, Eddie's did too, and together they built a new life that's lasted longer than anyone predicted. It wasn't the fairy tale Nashville had scripted, but it was real. Over time, LeAnn found strength in vulnerability. She spoke openly about anxiety, shame, and redemption, turning pain into purpose. Songs like What I Cannot Change revealed a rawness that felt worlds apart from her early hits. It was the voice of a woman who'd been burned by fame and still chose to sing. What's remarkable isn't the scandal, it's the survival. Most artists would have disappeared after that kind of fallout, but LeAnn rebuilt herself piece by piece, redefining what resilience looks like under a spotlight. Today, she stands as proof that mistakes don't have to end careers. They can rewrite them. Her story reminds us that love doesn't always follow the rules, and that redemption rarely comes wrapped in public approval. While fans argued over whether she deserved forgiveness, LeAnn was already living her next chapter. And that chapter inspired countless others to own their truth, no matter how messy it looked from the outside. But for every comeback story, there's another that started with betrayal and ended with an unexpected twist, one that no songwriter could have imagined. And that leads us to one of country's most unbelievable tales of heartbreak and poetic justice, the story of Shania Twain. Shania Twain, the double betrayal and the twist nobody saw coming. If LeAnn Rimes' story was a storm that tore through the tabloids, Shania Twain's was the earthquake that followed. Both women faced betrayal under the blinding lights of fame. But Shania's heartbreak struck deeper, not just because of who betrayed her, but how. Shania had built a life that seemed unshakable. She was the woman who turned country music into a global phenomenon, blending twang with pop until she became the genre's first true superstar. Every song, from You're Still the One to Man I Feel Like a Woman, radiated confidence, joy, and strength. Behind the stage lights, she had what looked like the perfect love story with her husband and producer, Mutt Lange. Together, they weren't just partners in life, they were partners in success. But fame has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. In 2008, the unthinkable happened. Rumors began to surface that Mutt had grown close to Shania's best friend, Marie-Anne Thiebaud, the very person Shania confided in about her marital struggles. What began as whispers turned into confirmation that Mutt and Marie-Anne had started an affair. The betrayal shattered Shania's world. It wasn't just losing a husband, it was losing her closest friend, her creative partner, her emotional anchor. For a while, she disappeared completely. The woman whose voice once filled arenas went silent, quite literally. A rare condition triggered by trauma left her unable to sing for years. But sometimes, heartbreak writes its own redemption arc. As Shania retreated to rebuild her life, she found an unexpected companion, Frédéric Thiebaud, the ex-husband of the very woman who'd betrayed her trust. Their shared pain became a bond, and over time, that bond turned into something deeper. Fans were stunned. The story had flipped. The betrayed found healing together, and from the ashes of deceit, Shania rediscovered love. It was poetic justice, the kind that could only happen in real life, not in a songwriter's imagination. When she finally returned to the public eye, Shania wasn't the same woman who'd left. She was stronger, wiser, and unafraid to let her scars show. Her comeback wasn't built on revenge. It was built on resilience. Songs like Life's About to Get Good and Today Is Your Day weren't just lyrics. They were declarations of survival. Shania proved that even when life takes everything, your voice, your trust, your security, you can rebuild louder than ever. She didn't let heartbreak define her. She turned it into her next chapter. And while her story taught the world about transformation, the next woman's journey showed the opposite side. What happens when you never hold back? When love burns too brightly, too fast, and for too long? Because after Shania's quiet comeback came the loud, unapologetic firestorm of Tanya Tucker, country music's original wild child. Tanya Tucker, the wild heart that refused to tame. If Shania Twain rebuilt herself through restraint, Tanya Tucker did the exact opposite. She lived every moment like a verse that couldn't be rewritten. And that's what made her unforgettable. By the time most teenagers are learning their first heartbreak, Tanya had already lived through several. She rose to fame at just 13 with the song Delta Dawn, and almost instantly, the world labeled her a prodigy. But fame in her youth didn't come with guidance, it came with freedom. And Tanya took that freedom and ran with it. Known for her grit and gravelly voice, she became the face of rebellion in an industry built on politeness. While most country stars sang about heartbreak, Tanya was out there living it, passionately, recklessly, and often under the public eye. Her relationship with Glenn Campbell became one of the most talked about romances in country history. Not because of how long it lasted, but because of how fiery it was. He was 22 years older, already a superstar, and deep into his own struggles with fame and personal demons. Together, they were electric. Two flames burning in the same storm. The tabloids couldn't look away. Their fights were as public as their kisses, And their love story blurred the line between devotion and destruction. Tanya later admitted she was addicted, not just to Glenn, but to the chaos of loving him. It was the kind of relationship that leaves scars you can't see, but never forget. After they split, she didn't slow down. There were more romances, more headlines, and more songs that sounded like diary entries set to a country melody. Tanya lived life at full speed, and it showed. She faced addiction, loss, and public criticism, but somehow she kept coming back, microphone in hand, eyes blazing with defiance. That defiance was her armor. In a genre dominated by men, Tanya's willingness to be raw and untamed made her a trailblazer. She didn't pretend to be perfect, and that's exactly why fans loved her. Her heartbreaks weren't hidden. They were performed, lived, and felt by millions who saw themselves in her chaos. And through it all, her music told the truth. Songs like Strong Enough to Bend and Two Sparrows in a Hurricane reflected not just survival, but self-awareness. The understanding that love doesn't have to look pretty to be real. Today, Tanya stands as one of the last true rebels of country music. She's weathered more storms than most, and somehow still smiles through them. She's proof that even when love breaks you, it doesn't have to end you. And while Tanya's story is about embracing the wild side of love, the next legend story is something entirely different. Her songs were filled with tenderness, her voice soft but powerful. Yet behind that grace was a life filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and loss. Because if Tanya Tucker was the storm, Tammy Wynette was the heartbreak that followed. A woman whose life proved that sometimes the songs we sing are cries we never got to say out loud. Tammy Wynette, love, loyalty, and heartbreak on repeat. If Tanya Tucker was the fire that burned without apology, Tammy Wynette was the slow flame that never stopped flickering, even when it hurt to stay lit. Her story connects perfectly after Tanya's, because where Tanya fought the world loudly, Tammy fought quietly and often lost. Tammy wasn't just the first lady of country music. She was its most tragic heroine. Every line she sang carried the ache of someone who knew what it meant to love too deeply and lose too often. Songs like Divorce and Stand By Your Man didn't come from imagination. They came from experience. She lived what she sang. Her marriage to George Jones remains one of the most legendary and turbulent love stories in music history. When it worked, it was magic. Their voices together could melt through walls. Fans adored them as country's royal couple, two people who seemed made for each other's melodies. But behind the curtain, it was chaos. George was battling addiction, and Tammy, despite her strength, was trapped in the cycle of loving him, losing him, and taking him back. There were fights, breakups, reconciliations, and heartbreak that spilled straight into her lyrics. The song Stand By Your Man wasn't a manifesto. It was a mirror. It reflected the conflict of a woman torn between pride and loyalty, between independence and devotion. But even after her divorce from George, Tammy's heart didn't find peace. She remarried several times, but none of those relationships lasted. Rumors followed her, whispers of control, pain, and a string of mysterious health struggles that plagued her final years. She was often hospitalized, her body weakened, but her voice never wavering. Through it all, she kept performing, kept smiling, and kept reminding the world what strength looked like when wrapped in sorrow. Her pain became her art, and her art became her escape. When Tammy passed away in 1998, it wasn't just the loss of a singer. It was the end of an era. She embodied the classic country spirit: vulnerability, loyalty, and the belief that even broken hearts deserve to be heard. Tammy Wynette's story still lingers because it feels universal. Everyone has stood by something or someone they shouldn't have. Everyone has believed love could fix what life had already broken. And while her music made her immortal, her pain made her human. She was the contrast to Tanya's rebellion, proof that some people fight through love, not by running from it, but by holding on, even when it hurts to breathe. But the world doesn't stop spinning for heartbreak. A new generation of women would soon rise, stronger, bolder, more unafraid to own their stories. And at the center of that wave stood a red-haired powerhouse whose resilience redefined what it meant to be a country queen. Because after Tammy's quiet heartbreak came a woman who turned her own pain into empowerment. Reba McEntire. Power, pain, and reinvention. Where Tammy Wynette's heartbreak felt like surrender, Reba McEntire's felt like survival. And that's what made her story such a turning point, not just for country music, but for how women in the industry were seen. By the time Reba rose to fame, country music had changed. The rhinestones were brighter, the production bigger, but the emotional core was still the same: heartbreak, love, and resilience. Reba embodied all of it. She wasn't just a singer, she was a force of nature, turning life's lowest moments into soaring anthems of strength. Her journey through love was just as complex as her career. Reba married twice, and both times, the world got a glimpse of how deeply she felt things. Her second marriage to Narvel Blackstock seemed unshakable. He was her manager, her partner, her anchor. Together they built an empire, blending business with love in a way few could. For decades, it looked perfect. But like so many stories in Nashville, what looked perfect from the outside was quietly falling apart. In 2015, Reba shocked fans when she announced that she and Narvel were divorcing after more than 25 years together. To the public, it felt sudden, but behind the scenes, it was the ending of a long, private unraveling, one that left her both heartbroken and, surprisingly, free. Reba could have stepped back, hidden from the spotlight, and let time do the healing. But she did the opposite. She stepped forward, stronger, funnier, and more unapologetically herself than ever before. Instead of running from the pain, she turned it into power. Her interviews from that time were raw and honest. She spoke about loneliness, faith, and learning to stand on her own again, all with the same warmth and humor that made fans adore her in the first place. She reminded the world that heartbreak doesn't always destroy you. Sometimes it rebuilds you. Her interviews from that time were raw and honest. She spoke about loneliness, faith, and learning to stand on her own again, all with the same warmth and humor that made fans adore her in the first place. She reminded the world that heartbreak doesn't always destroy you. Sometimes it rebuilds you. And just when people thought she might never open her heart again, Reba surprised everyone. She found new love with actor Rex Lynn, a romance that felt lighthearted and genuine. They call each other Tater Tot and Sugar Tot, a reminder that even icons can find joy after decades of pain. Reba's story stands out because it's not about tragedy, it's about transformation. She turned heartbreak into hope, showing that it's never too late to start again, no matter how many times love lets you down. Her resilience inspired a generation of artists who followed, women who saw that you could be soft and strong at the same time. And in a genre that once defined women by who they loved, Reba flipped the script. She became defined by how she lived after love. If Tammy Wynette taught us the beauty of endurance, Reba McEntire taught us the power of rebirth. But while Reba found new beginnings, another country legend chose a different path, one that rejected convention altogether. She walked away from marriage, from labels, and even from fame itself. And in doing so, she became one of the most quietly revolutionary women in country history. Because after Reba's reinvention came Linda Ronstadt, a woman who proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose freedom over forever. Linda Ronstadt, freedom over forever. After Reba McEntire found strength in rediscovering herself, the next story turns toward a woman who redefined what freedom meant. A legend who walked away from the spotlight not because she had to, but because she chose to. Linda Ronstadt was never the type to play by Nashville's rules. She was a musical shapeshifter. Country one day, rock the next, Spanish folk the day after that. Her voice could break your heart or set you free, sometimes in the same verse. But while fans adored her genre-bending brilliance, it was her approach to love that quietly challenged everything women in country were expected to be. Unlike her peers who sang about heartbreak, marriage, and loyalty, Linda didn't let love define her story. She dated famous men, musicians, actors, even politicians. But she refused to let any relationship become the centerpiece of her identity. In an era where women were expected to settle down, she never did. And that decision, subtle as it seemed, was revolutionary. Her romance with California Governor Jerry Brown was the talk of the nation. A country rock queen and a rising political star. Yet while the media tried to frame them as America's power couple, Linda stayed grounded. When asked about marriage, she shrugged it off. "I didn't want to be somebody's wife," she once said. "I wanted to be myself." That independence came at a cost. Some called her difficult. Others misunderstood her detachment as arrogance. But Linda wasn't cold. She was deliberate. She understood that love, for her, couldn't survive under a microscope. Fame demanded too much, and she refused to sacrifice her music or her freedom for anyone's approval. As years passed, she became a quiet symbol of autonomy, a reminder that a woman's worth isn't measured by who she's with, but by what she creates. Even when illness later took away her ability to sing, Linda's legacy spoke louder than ever. She didn't end her story in heartbreak or scandal. She ended it in peace. And in a world obsessed with romance and rumor, that kind of peace is its own rebellion. While Linda's life was defined by independence, the next story brings us back into the fire. To a modern voice who endured heartbreak after heartbreak, and yet kept coming back stronger. Because for every legend who chose solitude, there's another who chose to fight through pain until she found healing. That woman is Jana Kramer, the country star who turned her scars into strength. Jana Kramer, heartbreak, healing, and survival. If Linda Ronstadt taught us that freedom can be chosen, Jana Kramer showed us that sometimes it's earned the hard way. By the time Jana stepped into the country spotlight, she already carried the weight of a lifetime's worth of heartbreak. A former actress turned singer, she entered the industry with a voice full of warmth and songs that felt like open letters. But behind that charm was a woman who had learned to rebuild more times than most people ever have to. Her love life often made more headlines than her music. Multiple marriages, public breakups, and betrayal. It seemed like every time she began to heal, another wound reopened. Her marriage to former NFL player Mike Cosson was the most public of them all. The two appeared picture-perfect at first, young, successful, and madly in love. But soon, reality started to unravel. Rumors of infidelity surfaced, and Jana confirmed what fans had feared. Her husband had been unfaithful. More than once. The revelation shattered her, but instead of hiding from the cameras, she faced them. On her podcast and in interviews, she spoke about trauma, trust, and forgiveness with unflinching honesty. It wasn't performative. It was survival. Jana tried to save her marriage, even as the world watched every attempt fail. She talked about therapy, about setting boundaries, about learning to love herself again. And when she finally chose to walk away, it wasn't with bitterness. It was with clarity. Her divorce became a turning point, a message to millions of women who'd lost themselves trying to fix someone else's brokenness. What makes Jana's story so compelling is her vulnerability. She doesn't pretend to have it all figured out. She admits when she's hurting, laughs when she shouldn't, and finds beauty in chaos. Through her music, songs like I Got the Boy and Whiskey, she turns pain into poetry. In recent years, Jana has found peace in new love, motherhood, and a faith that grounds her. She's become a symbol of resilience for the modern generation of country listeners, the ones who crave authenticity over perfection. Jana's life proves that healing isn't linear. It's messy, loud, and sometimes public, but it's also powerful. Because when a woman like Jana decides that pain will no longer define her, the world listens, not because she's broken, but because she's brave enough to be whole. Her story closes the modern chapter of heartbreak in country music, bringing us full circle from the guarded mystery of Dolly Parton to the raw honesty of today's stars. But before we end this journey, there's one final name whose story ties them all together, a legend whose songs captured both rebellion and redemption. Because if Jana taught us how to heal, Loretta Lynn taught us why we fight to love in the first place. Loretta Lynn, the woman who turned pain into power. As Jana Kramer found healing in the modern age of heartbreak, it's only fitting to look back at the woman who paved the way for that kind of truth-telling. The original rebel of country music, Loretta Lynn. Before country stars were branding empowerment as a movement, Loretta was living it. Her songs were never polished fairy tales. They were unfiltered realities. A miner's daughter from Butcher Hollow, Kentucky, Loretta grew up in poverty, married at just 15, and had 4 children before her mid-20s. While the world told her to stay silent and submissive, she picked up a guitar and started writing about the things women weren't supposed to say out loud. Songs like Don't Come Home a-Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind and The Pill didn't just shake country radio, they divided it. Some stations refused to play them, others couldn't stop. She sang about cheating husbands, double standards, and the right for women to control their own lives. And she didn't whisper, she declared it. Loretta's storytelling came from a place of lived experience. Her husband, Doolittle Lynn, was both her greatest muse and her greatest trial. Their relationship was volatile, full of love, fights, and forgiveness. In another life, it might have broken her, but instead, she turned the chaos into art. Every argument became a verse. Every heartbreak became a chorus. That's what made Loretta different. She didn't wait for permission to speak her truth. She sang for every woman who'd ever been told to keep quiet, every mother who felt invisible, every wife who'd been hurt but stayed strong anyway. She gave working-class women a voice in an industry that often overlooked them. And even as fame grew, she never lost her humility. She'd say things like, "I'm just a country girl singing about what I know." But what she knew was raw and real. And that's why generations still listen. Loretta's passing marked the end of an era, but her spirit lives on in every female artist who dares to be honest. From Dolly's grace to Reba's strength, from Shania's boldness to Jana's vulnerability. When you look back across decades of country music, Loretta isn't just a chapter. She's the foundation. She didn't just survive the storms of love. She built her home in the middle of them and invited every woman who'd been bruised by life to come inside and sing. And that's the beauty of her legacy. Loretta Lynn didn't just write songs. She wrote permission slips for women to live unashamed. But even as her story fades into history, one question remains. If heartbreak shaped the sound of country music's past, what will define its future? Country music has always been more than guitars, twang, and rhinestones. It's been a mirror, reflecting the heartbreak, resilience, and faith of the people who live it. From the smoky bars of Nashville to the grand stages of the Opry, every love lost and every tear shed has shaped its soul. When we look back at the women who carried this genre forward, Dolly, Reba, Shania, Linda, Jana, and Loretta, we're not just hearing stories about men, mistakes, or melodies. We're hearing about freedom. Dolly taught us that love can be gentle but not naive. Reba reminded us that heartbreak doesn't have to be the ending. It can be the spark of reinvention. Shania showed the world that femininity and power can coexist, that confidence isn't arrogance, it's self-worth. Linda Ronstadt proved that independence can be its own form of love, one that doesn't need validation to be complete. Jana Kramer gave us the modern voice of healing, showing that brokenness isn't weakness, it's proof you tried. And Loretta Lynn, she gave us the blueprint, the courage to speak even when the world wasn't ready to listen. Together, they shaped a musical language that transcends melody, one that speaks directly to the human condition. It's why people still cry when they hear Jolene, still feel inspired by Fancy, still shout along to Man, I Feel Like a Woman. Their stories outlived their struggles because they weren't afraid to bleed in front of the world. And maybe that's the real secret of country music. It doesn't hide behind perfection. It bleeds, it bruises, and then it gets back up. Every heartbreak becomes a hymn. Every betrayal turns into a ballad. Every woman who's ever been told she wasn't enough finds her voice echoing through those songs. As new artists rise, names like Kelsea Ballerini, Lainey Wilson, and Carly Pearce, you can still hear echoes of those who came before. The honesty, the defiance, the heart. The genre may evolve, but its foundation remains the same. Truth told through tears. Because country music was never really about heartbreak. It was about what came after. The healing, the hope, the reminder that love, no matter how painful, is always worth the song. So the next time you hear a voice trembling through heartbreak or rising above betrayal, remember, it's not just music. It's the story of every woman who refused to stay silent. The story of how heartbreak didn't destroy them, it defined them. And that's why country music will never die. Because as long as there's heartbreak, there will always be a song.